Thank you. So the title of my presentation is Permeating Trauma with a Lens, and it talks about the role of photojournalism in imaging loss. Okay. So what exactly does my paper talk about? I wanted to reflect on the nature of photography and what is its relationship with loss and thanatography, its kinship with the idea of death, and how does it actually affect the viewers. So I'm not going to go into the history of what photojournalism is or how it started, but I want to draw your attention to the power of photojournalism. So when we talk about photojournalism, that is the representation of real-time news, hard news, soft news, any event that happens around the world. And going by the rate of pictures we are taking presently, we are becoming more and more a visual society. And what exactly does a picture do? It shows us a presence, as well as in that presence there is an absence, because that moment is gone. So what you see in a photograph is the presence of an absence, and thereby its kinship with loss, death, because that moment is frozen, it's dead. So there is that connection that one can draw. So photography and its relationship with thanatography. Then the quotation that I wanted to present was one by Christian Mez. He says, immobility and silence are not only the two objective aspects of death, they're also its main symbols, and they figure it. And that is the same thing that we find in a photograph. And now, because we are living in a visual society where there are so many photographs, what becomes also very important is that we investigate the impact of these representations. And how we do that is through using these great theories that we have, like effect theories, trauma studies, memory studies, all the latest and upcoming theories that help us understand the nature of an image. And because my paper is focusing on how do you permeate trauma with the lens, what effect does a picture, a traumatic photograph has on the audience, and how do photographs represent that loss? So first, I would like to begin by talking about the relationship between trauma and photojournalism. So trauma, as per Oxford Dictionary, is a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. And it is an event which occurs unexpectedly and which the subject is not prepared to handle. So it does happen, you are present in that situation, but you're not able to assimilate it. And photographs, when you take a picture of that trauma, they are like the substitute. I wasn't there when tsunami was hitting the probably shores of southern part of India, but when I see the photograph, it acts as a substitute for that experience. And these photographs, they make the invisible visible, and it can spread awareness. They garner support. For example, once a picture got published in in a newspaper in United States, wherein a woman was falling from the fire escape, and after that the laws of the entire country about fire escape were changed. So it can help in spreading awareness, garnering support, help and relief. For example, photographs of earthquake, people, when they see them in the papers, they start donating more. So they can represent a range of emotions, and not only represent, they can create a range of emotions in the viewer, because when the viewer sees those photographs, you can have emotions of horror, pity, anger, pain, sorrow. In my PhD research, I talked about all the emotions that, taking the clue from Aristotle's rhetoric, that he says that, pictures can arouse pathos. And Tompkins also has given us a range of emotions which these photographs can depict. Melanie McFarland, Seattle Times writer, she writes that in the blink of a shutter, photographic images can dig out emotions even finely, more in a better way that even that prose can't capture. For example, there are just 3 examples I've taken because I just had 10 minutes. This is a picture taken by Raghu Rai. This was taken during Bangladesh famine in 1971. Now, when you look at this picture, you can go into the technical details, how there is no negative space. There are these lines, the wrinkles on the face of this woman. You can, congratulate the genius of the photographer that he captured it right when the tears are about to fall from her eyes. So you can just see the pathos that this photograph creates. He's not representing famine or, famished children or children with kwashiorkor or, people dying. He's just representing a woman in her anguish, tears. So you can see, this speaks a lot in itself. And when the pictures like these were published, you could see the impact that they had on the people who were, watching, the what, the when, the where, the why, everything. So they can represent trauma, and this woman's going through a trauma. Then, for example, this is a picture taken by Arkudatta. This was taken in January 2001. There was an earthquake in Bhuj, and this shows a woman and her daughter crying in front of the ruins of their house in Bhuj district. Now, rather than representing broken, buildings or, things falling apart or the debris, what the photojournalist really chose to capture was a woman crying, the pain, the loss, the trauma of the earthquake, rather than the other destruction, the economical destruction. It represented the trauma. And when we look at this picture, people take years and years. So this woman particularly, she said 2 years ago she had a new home and now it's devastated, and you can see, through their expressions what it caused. Similarly, there's one more picture. This is very famous. Those of you who are Indians might be able to relate because you might have seen it. This became really popular. This was also taken by Arko Datta. This is a picture of Qutbuddin Ansari. He was the face of Gujarat riots 2002. So he was a Muslim, and the riots were, the Hindu-Muslim riots were on in Gujarat, and Arko Datta just saw him standing in a building which was which was on fire, and he was pleading and he was praying that somebody please save me. Say, Sahab, please bachao. Somebody please save me. And this picture, there's this man who's has blood stains on his shirt. The expression, the pity that it arouses, it became so famous that after this Qutb bin Ansari, he lost anonymity. Everybody knew he was. Now what were the repercussions of this representation of trauma? Were people got aware of the damage that the riots are doing, and then the government of Kolkata, government of West Bengal, they ended up offering help. They offered him government jobs. Everybody knew him. He said he had to move his own base. He had to move out of Gujarat because he said, my children started asking me that, Papa, why were you crying like that? Why did you are the man with folded hands. So there were so many repercussions. And then, there was this impact, the way it impacted his own life. And then the impact it had on the general public, where you can see, the sense of pain and anguish and trauma that he's going through. So these was just a few examples that I wanted to take to talk about my case. So, capturing a traumatic event mechanically, it is like an event which is stored in the memory. So when you talk about trauma and photojournalism, you end up talking about memory also, because memory studies can also be used to understand the entire dynamic. So trauma is when you forget without a memory, something is passing, but you're unable to process it. So when you take pictures, those memories are recorded quasi photographically, and they're never processed. Apologies for the typing error. They're never processed into understanding. So when you use affect theories to understand this, your focus is on the feeling aspect of a photograph, not the technical, the feeling. And these photographs, what do they serve as? They attest to the truth, which is supposed to be depicted by photojournalists. They are evidence of the past. They're a testament to the loss. They are haptic, and it's a haptic and optic coincidence. You're viewing it and you can also feel it. And Susan Sontag says they are memento mori, or they are remembrances of death, because it is something that has already gone by. So at present, photojournalism wields an unprecedented power to influence the viewers and even change the entire narrative. There is a huge debate on censorship that goes on in the media. What is the debate? The debate is that, because photographs are understood, translinguistically. You don't need to know the language of the people to read the news, but with a photograph, it just speaks across the globe. So the debate is that should people actually be allowed, should these representations without any censorship, should one be broadcasting these pictures of people who are, who are dying or who are dead? Doesn't it feel like they are being voyeurs on the scene? Sontag also wrote a book called Regarding the Pain of Others. She says that, people will get desensitized over time. They'll be so used to watching the gore and pain, and they will feel nothing. Does it actually rouse people to help, or does it really create a change? So there is this debate which one can really argue for or against both, but the reality is that you can't ignore the importance of photojournalism on account of censorship, because it really is a very powerful tool. It can show destruction and death, which sometimes viewers across the, sitting in different parts of the world, you may not even be aware. So this quotation, I think, sums up the entire debate. It says harm reduction is often secondary to the news value of the story and public's right to know. People have the right to know what is happening. So all kudos to these photojournalists who walk into the lion's den, or it's very difficult to be at a site like Bhopal gas tragedy or the Twin Towers falling, be there and be a witness and then capture those for the people. The eyes always want to know what they missed, and these pictures, they create a second grave. The whole time they hold, they're like testimonials, they're remembrances of the loss. So all over the world, these photojournalists are capturing all this and they bring it to the table. A good photojournalist can create a wave of change through his or her works by using the ability to photograph, which they can, pictures that can affect or modify the viewer's view. So I'll end up by this last quotation by Baer. He says, by capturing the pain of people and how they live after a disaster or tragedy, photographs can become potentially open-ended forms of testimony to and a call for a new ways of seeing. What Benjamin describes in a different but related context as the history of how a person lives on, and precisely how this afterlife with its own history is embedded in the life. So thank you very much. That is the end of my presentation.
Hi, Purva, I have a question.
Sure. Okay, I'll just stop sharing. Yes, please go ahead. Yes.
Purva, I mean, your paper is on a very interesting topic.
Thank you.
But I would just like to understand the title of it, where you said permeating trauma with a lens.
Yes, because as a photojournalist on a scene, see, when if you've seen this picture of a starving child, if you've heard of Kevin Carter, there's a very famous picture where a child is dying and a vulture is waiting right next to the child. And the photojournalist took that picture.
And I wanted to end the same, the Syrian guy the kid was driving on the sea.
Yes, sir. Yes. So there was a huge debate that why are you publishing this picture? Now, because as a photojournalist, the criticism is that you are another voyeur on the scene. People told Kevin Carter that you are also a vulture. Rather than picking up the child, rather than probably taking that dead child and, putting him in a grave, you're taking a photograph. So the photojournalist actually permeates that trauma. He enters the site and he permeates with the lens. That is why I use the word permeating trauma, because they dive head into the trauma and they do it with the lens. So then the next part is
somehow you want that fear or that anguish should not spread to the local, to the other viewers or to everyone else.
No. I don't think that's what I'm saying, sir, that the public's right to know is bigger, because they are real happenings. Photojournalists are not manipulating the scene. They are actual happenings around the world. And the public,
what is wrong with understanding that what is actually happening? I mean, you want to put a censorship to the amount of flow which is going through that, right? Or is it some other agenda? I was just confused on that part.
So my paper only talks about the role of photojournalism in imaging loss. How does photojournalism help in showing loss? How do these photojournalists permeate trauma with the lens? That was my paper. The conclusion does not say that I am for censorship or I'm against censorship.
Okay.
All I'm saying is that it has a very big role to play in imaging loss.
Right. It has a big role. It has a very. Thank you.
There is any ethical journalism. Does it stop us to not publishing those kind of pictures, or there is something?
The Syrian child was the first ever, globally published picture of a dead human being, and they said there was an entire debate in the newsroom. But then they went ahead with it because, if you remember, its face was down like that. Yep. They said we are publishing it because its news value was much bigger. It was much bigger. The awareness that needed to spread was a greater cause.
Yep, because that's very true. On the other side, on the other hand, the greater cause was much bigger, and there was a huge debate open around the world for that one. That's very interesting things. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you so much.
I really appreciate your work you have done. That's very interesting. Thank you.